Well, hello, Internet. I will admit I'm coming to you today a little more frustrated than I originally intended because I wanted to do this video to where I could set up one of the online encoders to where I could stream it on YouTube and be able to show you a screen share of what I'm doing on the website that I created, because so much of what I'm explaining to you and the information I'm about to give you is derived from spreadsheets that I posted up on this website that I want to share with everybody because I've done a lot of research and put a lot of energy into comparing the different cryptocurrencies that are out there. So I was going to start this video off with Bitcoin and be able to show you online as well as discuss in video what Bitcoin was looking like relative to the others. Because when it comes to finance, I think valuation, it's so important that that you understand everything is relative, because you might be able to evaluate a company and they look really good, but if you set them next to their competitors and evaluate the same criteria, maybe they don't look as good, or maybe they look even better. And that's exactly why I set up not only the valuation metrics that I did, but the format that I did on the website so you could see the different currencies relative to each other, which is so important. So that being said, we're just going to jump into the Bitcoin evaluation with me just explaining it. So I think the most important thing right out the gates that I evaluate that's really simple across all the coins is their inception date, like how long they've been around for, how long they've been developed for. Because typically speaking, just like with stocks, the longer a company has been around and been doing a good job, not only remaining solvent, but continuing to grow and progress within their industry, that's usually a good sign that it's a healthier company the longer it's been able to do that, right? So the first piece of criteria I look at is the inception date. And the inception date specific to Bitcoin is the best compared to all of its competitors, all of the other altcoins that exist. To the extent that Bitcoin has been developed since 2009, it is the original, the godfather, if you will, of cryptocurrency. Like it was the originator of all the other coins that we see, to where because Bitcoin is the original, all the others are considered alternative coins or altcoins. Bitcoin's the original, everything else is an altcoin. And the reason that is the case is because it's been developed the longest, since 2009. Granted, back in 2009, not a lot of people knew about Bitcoin. Now a lot of them do, but it's had a longer time to build up that recognition and that track record, which I think is really important and helps give it added value relative to its competitors, relative to the alts. The next piece of criteria I'm looking at on all of the different currencies is the number of exchanges that they're listed on. And the reason I feel like this is so important is because of access. Like, let's face it, the easier access something is, the more likely it's going to be to get used. And so, which is the case in a lot of things in life. So you don't want to be too easy access. Just kidding. Okay, bringing it back. There are so many different types of cryptocurrency exchanges out there, but not many of the cryptocurrency exchanges give you a really, really wide variety of the different cryptos to invest in. Some of them are more difficult to access in that sense. And because of that, I feel like the coins that are the most difficult to access, they're not readily available on a lot of exchanges, aren't going to be as valuable. They're not going to have as much demand flowing into and affecting that price. And that brings me back to Bitcoin and the fact that relative to all the other altcoins and all the other competitors that I've compared it with, like Bitcoin, hands down, is listed on the most number of exchanges relative to anything else. Therefore, I gave it on my website like an A grade because it did the best relative to all the others in the sense that it's listed on the most exchanges. Okay, so that's the exchange criteria. Next one I want to talk about in this video is very vaguely described as marketing. Because marketing in an old school finance sense meant the type of people that were putting out commercials and billboards and investing all kinds of money in that. But now it's all about internet marketing, social media marketing. And so especially with the cryptocurrencies, because of how new and progressive this industry is, the best marketing that they get, the ones that are doing that are the healthiest in that sense, are the ones that have the most Twitter followers, are the ones that have the most Reddit forum members, are the ones that are doing the best from a developer point of view on GitHub. So I went through, and again on the website you can see relative to the other coins, how a particular one, in this case Bitcoin, is doing in terms of how many followers it has, how many members it has. And with that being said, I have to say that Bitcoin gets another A grade because it's blowing all of the other competitors out of the water, because it hands down has the most Twitter followers out there of any other coin available. It hands down has the most Reddit forum members than any other coin available. And in terms of GitHub and developers and how active that community is and how many stars that Bitcoin has relative to the others, it's doing like 2 thumbs up relative to anybody else. So good job, Bitcoin. And I think this is linked back to what I discussed originally and being the first mover advantage and being developed for the longest and having, having an inception date that dates back quite a bit further, usually on average 3 to 5 years longer than a lot of our current coins do. And then within the marketing, I also want to point out the fact that there has been on just like a systematic level, on like a macro crypto level, not just about Bitcoin, but with all of them, something that I noticed as I'm doing these evaluations is the fact that there is a larger percentage increase of followers and forum members and GitHub activity within the last month than there has been in previous months. For example, between the months of July and August, there was about a 15% increase in the number of Twitter followers and Reddit forum members that started subscribing to Bitcoin and started being interested in Bitcoin. And this, again, goes for the other alts as well. But then from August to September, that next month, the more recent month, it wasn't a 15% increase in interest and followers. It was a 30% increase in interest and followers. It doubled in its percentage increase of people that are interested in this industry. Which brings me to the last point that I want to make on this video specifically. Maybe second to last, we'll see. But anyways, it brings me to the point where I like to think of this market as a whole, again, just even aside from Bitcoin, but I like to think of the cryptocurrency market as a whole as almost like a pyramid that's emerging from the ground. I even did a very crude image of it, but I think it's important to kind of keep this in mind when you're thinking about where we are in the industry as a whole and the interest that's happening. So I think here's the ground and here's the pyramid that's starting to emerge from it. I hope this is in focus on the camera. I can't quite tell. But anyways, here's the first layer, so to speak. And I define this one as B2C, which in traditional business terms stands for business to consumer. But in this case, you could sub the B for Bitcoin if you want to. But this is like phase 1. This is like 2009 up until pretty recently, I'd say. And this is your original investors and followers of Bitcoin. Like this is, I even put a little caret up there between the B2C part and put B2 smart C. Like these are your smart consumers, your early adopters. So this is where all the Silk Road activity started happening. And outside of the Silk Road, it's just your people who are the more rogue investors, like individuals and institutions that started investing in Bitcoin and now some of the alts earlier on. And I think we're still in phase 1, but like towards the end of phase 1. And the reason I think we're towards the end of phase 1 is because of what I was talking about in this marketing section, what I learned to see the giant influx of extra people and extra interest in the market. And this next layer that's coming about because of it, phase 2, if you will, the next layer of the pyramid that's coming through and emerging and growing, and the new interest that's it's associated with, I think is really indicative of a lot of the news stories that we've been seeing lately in regards to hedge funds getting involved, like big Wall Street money. And so that brings me to the next layer of this giant Bitcoin and cryptocurrency pyramid that's happening, like phase 2. And this one I put B2B, like, which again traditionally stands for business to business. But in this example, we could say Bitcoin to business, because we're not just looking at more of like the niche individual consumers anymore. We're now looking at like a bigger wave, larger interest of like Wall Street money, institutional investors and hedge funds and stuff coming through. And that's where you're going to see a much larger influx of prices. And mind you, as a side note, within this whole process, within this timeline, pyramid timeline, so to speak, there's a lot of market fluctuations that happen with the price of Bitcoin and other altcoins in this midst also. And there's a lot of people, like some of those rogue initial individuals and investors that started to invest, like they got burned in the dips that happened between this phase and this phase. And some of them are leaving and probably never coming back because of how much they were burned, because they didn't time it well with their buys and their sells. And that's going to be the case in almost in any industry you look at. But I'm talking about like as a whole, where the interest has come from and where it's going, and where the investors therefore have come from and where they're going. So yeah, this is like, again, a lot of the bigger institutions, big Wall Street money, you get the idea. And then phase 3, which this is where we start getting into trouble, because this is where all of the business to consumer money, the B2C money, comes in again. But I put a caret that instead of saying smart says not so smart. I didn't want to call these people dumb investors, but well, I guess I just did. Sorry, I'm not sorry. I mean, hopefully you watch this video and just try and prevent yourself from being one of them. And chances are, if you are watching this video relatively close to when it's recorded, you're going to be up in this area anyway, so don't fret. But for those of you that are watching this much later on, like maybe a year or two from now, and then you're like, oh, maybe I want to start investing in Bitcoin now, guess what? You're down here. You're in an area that's a lot more risky, because it's only a matter of time before the bubble pops. Like that's when all these people, all like everybody else floods in after all the Wall Street money, after all the early adopters. Like it's so trendy that everybody's doing it. Like that's when the bubble pops. That's when the people at the very top that have been partying in the penthouse for a while, making money off of all of these other layers, finally say, you know what, I think I've made enough money for now. I'm going to sell. And then they call a couple of their other whale friends. They'll be like, hey, yeah, bro, I think I'm doing pretty well on this whole Bitcoin thing or whatever the altcoin is. I'm going to sell too. And then the next thing you know, they all have a sell-off, bubble bursts. Like that's when this whole pyramid just freaking rips in half, bubble pops, money evaporates, and hopefully, since the industry will still be around, hopefully we'll be able to have some players that kind of creep back into the picture and manage to do a good job of like sustaining themselves. It's just like what I'm trying to say is like after the tech bubble happened, after the .com bubble happened, and then the bubble burst, there were still some companies that were able to stick around and do a good job. They were persistent. They weren't just like crappy companies to begin with. They were able to make a comeback, and some of the altcoins and Bitcoin will potentially be able to do the same thing, unless I think there's a caveat that now that it's ripped, now that the bubble popped and this thing's ripped, I'm gonna do my best to say like here's the potential caveat, phase 4, and I put a question mark next to phase 4 because I think something that could help support this bubble and keep it from bursting, or keep it from bursting quite as dramatically, is if B2G gets involved, with which traditionally stands for business to government, or in this case it could stand for Bitcoin to government, or potentially any of the altcoins. But if cryptocurrency in general, and if Bitcoin specifically, is able to transcend its current its current nature of being more of an asset and more of an investment, and it actually is able to generate credibility as a currency at some point, or maybe one of the altcoins is actually able to generate credibility as a solid currency at some point, then you might actually, this is kind of a pie in the sky thing, but I think it's possible, you might actually see some governments, potentially some big governments, that start adopting altcoins and blockchain-based currency as their form of official national currency. And if that happens, and especially like whichever currency, like whichever coin it happens with, they're going to be significantly less damaged by any bubble pop that happens. And government getting involved and supporting this bottom of the giant pyramid could honestly mean the bubble not quite popping to the that extent in the first place. So it's gonna be interesting. I don't know what's actually gonna happen with that, but that's just something I've postulated. Like, I mean, yeah, you're for sure gonna get consumers involved in this whole blockchain revolution. You're for sure gonna get businesses involved in this whole blockchain revolution. But the more you can really get governments in on it to recognize it and make it more official, especially as a potential currency, the less likely it is to like massively fail. But there's a lot of time that's going to elapse, and a lot of interesting and weird regulatory experiences that are going to elapse within that amount of time before we can even consider it. And in a video that I'm going to address later based on another one of these valuation metrics, I talk about how Bitcoin and the fact that it's kind of classified as a currency, but I really go over why it shouldn't be classified as a currency based on our traditional definitions of money. There's 3 traditional definitions of money, and Bitcoin does a decent job at the first one, being a medium of exchange, but it does not do a good job at all of being a store of value or a unit of account. And again, I'll get into that in more detail later. So I think, but back to that example with the pyramid, I think that's why it's going to be difficult for the governments to officially adopt Bitcoin specifically as a currency. They're probably going to be more likely to adopt another altcoin as an official currency that's not as volatile in its price fluctuations. And then the last little side note that I'll mention that I compared a lot of these coins against each other on is their ability to generate partnerships. And some of the altcoins, they have a lot of business partnerships in relationship to what they're doing. Like they have business contracts together and they're going on joint ventures together. Like I know Microsoft is teaming up with a few of the different coins for different projects and stuff like that. But with Bitcoin, when it came to projects and how it was related to more mainstream names and partners, it was more in the sense of what different retailers actually accepted Bitcoin. And some of the top ones that I have listed were Overstock.com, Expedia, Dish Network apparently accepts Bitcoin. So if you're a Dish Network customer, supposedly you could pay for your monthly subscriptions in Bitcoin, which is kind of interesting. And then Microsoft and Deloitte are the 2 like traditional top players in traditional business that are really doing a good job of claiming some stake in the blockchain market. And Microsoft does that by allowing its users to purchase, I have my notes here, allowing its users to purchase games and movies using Bitcoin through their Microsoft and Xbox store. So that's something that I think as this industry progresses, something that's going to be a really big selling point is in-app purchases and in-game purchases, specifically for you gamer types. Like I think in-game purchases with whether it's Bitcoin or some other crypto like game credits maybe, or whether it's in-app purchases, like you download an app and you want to make purchases, like when you can start making those in Bitcoin or in other cryptocurrency denominations, like that's when you know it's that much more pervasive in our tech society. But for now, Microsoft's involvement, it's not in-app or in-game. It's just you can actually make purchases at the Microsoft store. Like Microsoft itself, through Xbox and Microsoft Store, accepts Bitcoin as a payment for its apps. And then I also saw that apparently Subway accepts Bitcoin, and I've been to Subway a few times recently, but I haven't seen any signage as to whether or not they actually accept Bitcoin. So that might be a fun thing to add in the comments. Like if you've ever paid for your footlong sandwich in Bitcoin, let me know in the comments. I would be interested because to me that's That's like a typical traditional transaction you would make within your week. And the fact that you can do that with Bitcoin, again, is like an indicator that it's become that much more pervasive in our culture, which is what is going to give it value in and of itself, and especially relative to some of its other competitors. Okay, on that note, let's see. I should probably wrap it up here. I was going to say something else about partnerships, but I don't remember what it was. And that's okay. Considering the morning I had just trying to get this video done in the first place, I think it went well. So anyways, I will roll some of the end credits that involve, like, if you want to follow me on social media, and I'm going to try and be better about not only putting out videos, but also indicating on my Twitter account, like, when I've actually posted a new video. But in the meantime, if you don't have Twitter, you can always subscribe and then select the notifications button, which I think is like this little bell looking thing. So subscribe, hit the bell, you'll get a notification next time I make a video, and voila. Or check Twitter. Check out Twitter when I say, hey, I made a new video, or hey, I made an update to the website, because to me, that's where I'm spending so much more time. Like, for every few minutes I spend on video, I've probably spent a few hours on the website updating information and data, comparing the different coins to each other, and trying to provide that to you guys so you can decide like what coins have more value and what you actually want to invest your money in. So on that note, have fun doing research. Always invest at your own risk. There's tons of information, but this market is super volatile. So even if you find really good information here that you invest on or somewhere else, like, you never know what could happen. So everything is done at your own risk. What I always tell my friends who are asking me about like different tips and everything, especially about this market, they're like, oh, should I buy this dip? Should I do this? Should I do that? And like, don't invest anything more than you can't afford to lose. That's the name of the game. Everything's done at your own risk, and don't invest anything you can't afford to lose. That'll help you sleep at night. And hopefully you do make investments that you can afford to lose, that make you some nice money and returns in the process.